Hello, happy new year, and welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess, the consultress, and I am bringing you conversations from the front lines of innovation in business and in life and in general, things that create our what comes next out of this age of disruption. Nothing is normal, everything's new and up for review. So I'd like to welcome my guest for this morning, Miss Mona Martoken. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you, Alyssa, for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We actually have known each other for quite some time, since I
Quite
think
some time.
maybe like middle school. And we recently reconnected over motherhood. And so cheers to you. I noticed on your mug, you had said to me, there used to be something on here that looks like something behind me. What did it say?
It used to say sunshine. Hello, sunshine. But,
Hi.
but it went away in the dishwasher. This was I was pregnant and it was COVID and I ran into Target and we had just moved and I bought this mug. So I don't know why, but I like to keep it as a reminder of that.
Heck yeah. And so
Yeah.
like the strangest little things, like the little winking aspects of our universe help us to stay on that positive tip. Like, oh, you have that
Yeah.
feeling when you see the mug, like, oh, it used to say sunshine, but now it's in here, you know.
That's
This
right.
piece of art behind me is something I did for
Beautiful.
a mom's night in. A few people who are near and dear to me came over, a lot of my homeschool mom friends at the time and some
Oh.
other friends that I had collected along the way, and we crammed into my little living room and kitchen area. But I'm so happy that I have this now because to
Yeah.
me, it like embodies what I'm up to here on Rise and Shine about, talking about the things that move us, the things that transform us. And part of what we reconnected on was the evolution of the self through motherhood, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your journey through motherhood and or at least pick a place to start.
Okay, so I will say that uh I'll start at the beginning. I gave birth at the beginning of COVID, at the beginning of lockdown. So for anyone who doesn't remember, but it was the world shut down and I was going to the city and I was getting, um uh sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. See, this is what happened to us during COVID. We lost our damn
Yeah, we just lost it.
especially in New York. Just saying.
No, but it was during lockdown and I gave birth and my husband was allowed to be in the delivery room, but had I given birth a couple of days earlier, he wasn't going to be there. And so just me and my twin girls in the delivery in the private room, and that's how we started motherhood. And my friend likes to call it crisis birth stories. She gave birth during 9/11. And so she says that's what we call crisis birth stories, and having to be locked in together as a family. But I wasn't able to have help, and I wasn't able to have the baby nurse that I hired or my mom or my mother-in-law or any siblings or anybody to come help. And all of a sudden you're just thrusted into motherhood by yourself.
Mhm.
And that's where I think everything changed for me.
And I want to just pick out some key things that I heard you say.
Mhm.
This is usually a time when we gather our people around us. And in this instance, you had to innovate on the fly. You had
Yes,
to enter a world of the unknown with only you and your intuition and your act of love and connection to these two human beings you just brought into the world.
that's exactly right. The way you said that, that was amazing because usually I would have had a lot more recovery time, but instead I had to get up within the hour because nobody was going to be able to bring me the babies. I had to go and feed and change diapers, and I had to be up and moving. And they also shortened the stay. So if I needed to get out a day early, and I just wanted to get home. I wanted to get home. I wanted to be safe. I just wanted to be with my husband and be with our babies. And that time was really special because it was just the four of us, but everyone got to miss my kids. No one got to meet them. No one got to see their first crawl or see the first time that they smiled or get to celebrate the milestones like 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, and things, or even Halloween or, like things of that nature. So it was really sad, but it was, all of a sudden everything was just here and I had to face it alone. And that's when, as being a parent, a lot of things come up for you.
All the things come up for you.
All the things come up. So
Yeah.
there's a bit of a healing journey that you get to go on. And that's what happened to me, I think.
Mm-hmm. And the evolution of the self, right, comes from being faced with challenges. I think
Right.
a lot of our society is based around avoiding challenge for some reason.
Right.
Like you talk about like healthcare in general. It's like, oh, someone's sick, avoid them. Or
Right.
don't be around people because that could harm you. And there's this almost obsession with avoiding conflict or avoiding hard things
Yeah.
because we live in an age where many things have been made easier through technologies and innovations. But also like the shadow side of that is, I'm afraid of everything, right?
Right.
But so I want to just tease out for a second, you had both a gift and a grief in this time. You
Right.
had to go through this stuff alone, but the gift, and I guess the gift is also you got to have a solid, however long, 4, 5, 6 months, I don't know, of just you and your husband and your babies, like
Yes.
all 100% present. How often have I heard moms say, in the first few months of life, I had to get back to work, or I had to
Yes.
this and that, and you have to handle the visitors and the this and that, and it's exhausting.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and in this first period of time, while there was unique challenges because that assumption of what, people coming and celebrating and being with you were
Right.
absent, what were some of the gifts and those awareness of that time together, and how long was it?
So my husband was home for about a year and almost a year and a half. So
Mm.
but I mean he started working, he had paternity leave for about 2 months or so. And then, he was working from home, but everything was um a little different back then. It wasn't as crazy. And people were still trying to figure out how to do this work from home stuff. And, so it wasn't so bad in the beginning, but then started getting into a routine of, his meetings and whatever he had to do. Um, but I think one of the best things is that he was there for the first time they rolled. He was there for the first time they said mama, dada, and it really formed this bond, just the four of us now. And even I still see it to this day. The girls just love to be just the four of us at home. And
Mhm.
so in a way it was taken away from us, but in a way a lot of things were taken away, but a lot of gifts were there, that's for sure. And he got to see those things, and we got to be this tight knit family. And you know what, I didn't have, how you were saying earlier about people coming over and bringing germs, and people were like, oh, you have to hold them an unsolicited advice from people.
Uh-huh.
I didn't get that. And I got to keep them to myself for the first like year, and so that is kind of nice too. I don't know.
Yes. Yes, and this is the gift of motherhood that I think, we all have our friends that we call for advice and help and
Right.
whatnot. And I got to experience that kind of cocoon, if you will, when I was homeschooling the kids. I got trained as a human potential trainer, and then I sent my kids off to pre-K and whatnot, and I watched them
Mhm.
come home with the very tendencies I was helping people in their 50s and 60s to weed out that was standing in their way. And I'm like, oh, I can't unsee that. Yeesh. All right. I wonder what the opportunity that this is.
Right.
But we made a decision, and for 6 or 7 years, you know we were home with them quite a lot. My husband went to work and stuff, and I was managing my business from home. But we also experienced that opportunity for close encounters where I discovered a love of literature that I had never known before because I was reading
Really?
to them and I wanted to give to them. And I didn't want to do it the way everyone else had done it. I didn't want to put them through a series of assignments that was creating conflict. So I very quickly decided I was going to use the theme of unschooling to help them learn through experience. Because here I am, an experiential human potential trainer. And I'm like, well, that's the curriculum, right? But in this, I got into reading just for the joy of reading literature. I got into knitting and all sorts of like homey things. I thought I was like career woman extraordinaire. I couldn't wait to get my kids back out to daycare and blah blah blah. And here
Yeah.
I was starting to learn that like there were things about life that I hadn't realized I was craving until I had the space and the time to sit in
Yeah.
and discover it. And
Yes.
now, then I was battling my ego, right? The battles with the ego are real as a mom.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, I love everything that you were just saying because it's so true because you finally see these children and you want to be able to give them everything, but you also have to teach them in a way. And
Your
sorry.
ego, your
Yeah,
ego
it
gets in the
in the
way.
way.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And it just gets in the way of everything, and you're not sure where to go.
And then you got to figure it out, right? Like
Right.
your whole. I had these two babies with me in a private room in the hospital. You had to figure it out. And so,
Right.
when we battle our ego, we sit there and we're like, okay, so I want you to take a nap. You are cranky and I can see that you're tired.
Hmm.
You're not taking a nap because you're overtired. So, like allow this to bring to mind some of the things that you notice where you didn't know what you didn't know, and then you went and figured it out.
Yeah, you didn't know what you didn't know, and then you were figuring out, but at the same time, you're also figuring out things about yourself. And so I found that I had to heal a lot of things about myself and not get so triggered by the crankiness or the not napping or whatever, and especially with two crying babies are just going insane. And so in order to heal those things and then get to a place of alignment and like learning to be that mom that you always wanted for yourself but also want to be for your children. Does that make sense? I don't know, but
Yeah.
like, yeah. And so, and then when you become attuned to that, it's when your intuition starts to flow. And that's when you start realizing that putting the foundational basics into your children has become now paramount. Like when you said that being a career woman was so important, you thought you'd always be a career. I was the exact same way. I thought I would be career. I never in a million years thought I would be a stay-at-home mom. But once I saw and realized that these foundational basic life skills that needed to be built into them, even not just learning your ABCs, but learning emotional regulation or learning self reliance or resilience, those real key life skills, which they can learn once they go to pre-K and whatever, but they need a guide. They need that person to help them grow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all children, I think all of us are here with our souls, you know, purpose. We have a purpose in this life. We don't know what it is. Maybe we do know what it is. Maybe it's something significant as being as a president of the United States or a prime minister, or maybe it's insignificant or not insignificant, but being on a smaller scale, by just waving hi or saying hello to a stranger could make a difference in that person. And I think that when you align yourself to your motherhood, to your what motherhood is for you and what you are supposed to be aligned as, then you can help these little souls align to their purpose and their highest potential. And I think that's where the journey, the spiritual journey of motherhood came for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Realizing that there's magnitudes of operation at work here in this
yeah.
lifetime. And just because you're not managing countries, you're managing household. And like
Yes.
even like this like visual of really big versus really small, it's not diminished. The meaning is shifted. So when
Yeah.
we like are taught to think in a hierarchical way, we think, oh, career, I have the ability to make money and make decisions and affect change in a organizational way
Right.
or make new products and innovations. And then we come to the home and we're like, well, I brushed my teeth today. I feel like a failure, man. I'm doing nothing, or I'm exhausted doing all of this stuff and there's nothing to show for it.
Right.
I'm not, moving mountains and inspiring millions. I'm trying to maintain with my sanity and trying to be the best person I can be because I have two people here watching me. And I
Yeah.
have two people here taking my cues for how to behave in this world.
Yes.
And for me, that shift in meaning, it didn't come easy. It came like a ton of bricks, and I had to process a lot of um, despair and feelings of insignificance because my career woman's like, well, you go, you make money, and that's where you derive your meaning from. And then here I was as a mom looking
Mhm.
at things like my kid's not eating the floor. My kid's not gnawing on the radiator. This is the win. You your
Yeah.
whole landscape. And so in those times I was confronted with, what have I been assigning for meaning for myself?
Mm,
How have I been operating? Are there assumptions out here that I've been operating on that I didn't even realize that I was? And so that notion of taking everything into review, looking literally unturning every little stone in this garden to say, is this an assumption or is this something I'm doing on purpose? And I think that is what started for me the momentum and the movement between me for me's sake and me for the long run. Like I never saw myself in the long run as connected to like a whole community that was
mm.
relying on me. And that was the big change for me. But it came in very small doses and a lot of resistance and a lot of tears.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was definitely a lot of resistance. And it's funny you talk about the community or the tribal effect, because there all of a sudden, you are, even though you're part of your family, you have your parents and you have your siblings and extended family. When you have your own tribe or your own family to consider, and it just really everything just changes. Um, and it really changed for me was, I think I never really felt that either, but like my kids bring that out in me, just to have that closeness and that the four of us, that foundational, that first year of being locked down together, that's what really drove it in for me too. um and I think that we're not perfect, and we're always going to have resistance to things, and we're always going to um you know yell about, like, don't eat that, or don't put that in your mouth, and we're always going to freak out about stuff, and you don't see what the change now, but you'll see it hopefully in the future when they become adults, and you know they have the self-confidence to say no to that drink, or say no to that drug, or to say no to that boy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
those self-reliant skills,
yeah,
that's what you're building in now. I think that's,
yeah. And aren't we looking at ourselves in the same light, going
yes,
like, oh, why is that a trigger point for me? Why is this so important to me? And we get the
right.
opportunity to look in and to take some inventory and say, huh, well, now that I have someone that I'm teaching this stuff to, maybe I need to look at what I've learned and decide if it's actually applicable, if it's really valuable. And this is the climactic overthrow of like the institutionalization of learning, where we're
Yes,
like, wait a minute, I was taught to study, recite, repeat, and then took a test and I let it go. In parenting and in relationships, we're always looking at, is it relevant right now? Like I'm sitting here yelling at my kid because they pissed me off because
right,
what
right.
happened when I was a kid. But hang on, is it me that's upset, or is it me that's frustrated that I'm not getting my point across? And maybe how do they feel that they're frustrated and they're not getting their point across?
Yes.
It has
That's
you look at like your tendencies a little differently.
absolutely, because that's what I call, and what other people call, is breaking, is generational cycle breakers. Because we would be yelled at for whatever, and our parents would just go on about their way. But here we are trying to figure out why we're yelling, building that emotional connection, trying to understand, is it a frustration or is it not? And which I love is who I love on Instagram is Dr. Becky Kennedy, um, from I think it's Good Inside. And what she says is that all children, even all parents, we're all good inside. We just get some frustration, we make a mistake, whatever, but we can always repair and reconnect. And that's what I try to do with my child. You know, sometimes I do yell, and of course I do yell, and of course I get mad at them for, you know, whatever it was. But and I get mad, but what I do differently than what my parents do is I apologize right away and I repair in the moment. And I try to understand mommy had big feelings, you know, these are things we shouldn't do. You know, like, and I'm like, I'm just trying to tell you this is not, you know, it's not good for you to, you know, put the toothbrush in the toilets, you know, or whatever it is, you know.
Oh,
Or, you know, I don't know what she was doing the other day, but, you know, it's just, you know, like, I think that's the difference. That's the difference that our generation is doing. That's what I think is going to be building this, bring forth this new generation, this
mhm,
next generation of adults who can emotionally regulate themselves and who can you know, be resilient and apologize and take accountability because
mhm,
they see us doing that. In fact, my one daughter in school, you know, the teacher, we had the parent teacher conference last week, and she told us that she's been a role model to the other students because when she accidentally bumps into another student, she apologizes right away and uses her words. And they thought it was commendable that she does that. And they love that because they want the other kids to follow suit. And a friend of mine said that, you know, and I said, you know, that's because that's what we do. We apologize right away. I'm sorry, mommy yelled. I'm sorry, mommy was upset, you know, or whatever the case is, you know. And I
yeah.
think that's what we you know.
Yeah. So some really key things is we learn to emotionally regulate ourselves because we see how we're giving that to our families. And that can
Yeah,
be up or down the chain. As
yeah,
I've become a mother, I have realized maybe as a daughter growing up, there were certain things that triggered my mom in a way that
absolutely.
I didn't realize why she was behaving the way she was. But as an adult, as I'm, coming up against that same cyclical theme or pattern, I am
Hmm.
able to both look at myself as the descendant and myself as the future ancestor, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's nothing wrong with our parents. It's just that they just didn't have the emotional toolkits that there are now available now.
Yep.
Also, back then, you couldn't talk about mental health in a way that you can talk about now. You know, back then you couldn't say you were depressed because, you know, people would be like, what's wrong with you? Get over it, you know, like, or you couldn't say you were feeling a certain way. Now it's, you know, it's so more, it's just a lot more open. It's a lot more, it's allowed, you
Mhm.
know, there's space now for it
Yeah.
to live. Yeah. So
And there's an acceptance to it too. So this
yeah.
leadership from the self, like this acceptance of maybe I wasn't stellar or perfect. and
Mhm.
then turning around and having the compassion that other people may not right now, given what they have and who they are in the moment, may not
Mhm.
be stellar or perfect either. And so
Yeah.
like having that compassion and having the bandwidth to say, your feelings are about you, my feelings are about me. And by the way, the wounds that I have from my past, those person's feelings were about them, not me. I assigned the meaning to it. And so, so
Yeah.
this reevaluation, and I found that because I had the children, it was more in a more a bigger priority for me, an imperative to look at these things under the microscope. Whereas, adult Alissa, who would have continued her trajectory without any children or husband or whatever, I
Yeah.
may never have had the opportunity to look at these things in this way. So I am
Absolutely.
forever changed.
Absolutely. There again, Mona, future Mona, who was doing career and whatever, I would have ignored it, numbed it, not even thought about it, just ran away from it. I would never have been. This forced me to look at the things, the shadows, the pains, the pain bodies, whatever, because all that trauma, or not even, I wouldn't say, trauma is such a big word, but it is kind of like trauma, even as small and insignificant, or even as big as something huge. But just all that stuff lives inside you, it lives in your body, it's still there, and it comes out when you're triggered by something you don't even realize. And that's exactly why I think this is why we were bonding about it. And we were talking about, and you said something that I thought was so profound, that the mothers getting through all that muck, right, and then coming down to our intuition, our mother's intuition becomes the roadmap for our little family. And that is so absolutely true, and I loved when you said that.
It is, and I think that's as a hologram for the rest of living in general, not just mothers,
Yeah.
single women, men out there
Yes.
doing their thing. It's also a template that's like, hey, when I'm responsible for more than just me, it challenges me to become better because I'm willing now to look at things that are hard to look at, things that
Hmm.
are difficult to go through because I have a reason to do it. I have
Yeah.
people that I'm responsible to, responsible for. And
Exactly.
that's challenging me to grow. And the whole world right now is looking at things in a different light, saying, these are challenges I never thought I'd be up against.
Hmm.
These are people that I never thought I would have to interact with. These are situations I
Yes.
myself in my own little bubble could never have imagined. And they're here now. They're not happening to me, they're happening for me. And if we can get to that one little pivot of a shift around
Yes.
it's happening for me to take a look and
Yes.
decide how to respond. Like I studied Jack Canfield, so this is another one of those resources that revolutionized my
Okay.
parenthood. But
Hmm.
there's this formula that a lot of his training is based on called this formula: E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. So if you continue in your like you can't change the events; these are the things out there that are happening for us or to us, right?
Hmm.
But our response, our way of, engaging with the event is what produces our outcomes. If we continue to just knee jerk react and blindly follow these
Right.
deep rutted impulses of, ways of behavior that we maybe didn't choose, we just kind of took on at some point,
Yes.
little T, big
Exactly.
T trauma, right? But we have the opportunity to take a look at all these outcomes. Like we have responsibility in all
Mhm.
of these outcomes in our lives. And if we can take one step back and say, what is my piece? Where do I accept responsibility for my behavior, my thoughts, my
Yes.
actions, and really take an honest acceptance of maybe it hasn't been stellar to now, but because I'm aware of it, now I have the opportunity to make a different choice. I have the opportunity not just to react, but to respond instead and to
Yes.
make that a conscious choice for things as little as, what I'm going to go buy at the grocery store today, or
Yeah.
things as big as life-changing events. Hey, this big thing happened like lockdowns. How am I going to respond to that? Well, I'm going to
Yes.
build trust. I'm going to build my village. I'm going to use my intuition. Everybody has access to their intuition. It's not unique to you and me or mothers.
Right. Absolutely. I think you're right. Everybody can do that. And everyone has access to their intuition. And for me, I know people can do therapy, and I think therapy is amazing, and I think everyone should do therapy, but or talking to a friend or working out. But for me, it was meditation. And so I get up in the mornings if I have time in the morning, or usually, or if it's when they're go to school, or in the evenings, or whatever time I could find, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I find that I have to meet myself, because learning learning to be a mom, or learning this motherhood journey, is learning about me. And so that is where I have to come back to myself. And that is where everyone says, oh, moms always have to take care of themselves. And they say, go to a spa, or go to like out to dinner with your friends, which is all great. But you have to really do the work, and you have to do some real self-care. And for me, that's meditation. So I have to meet myself and get myself centered and aligned and attuned. And then I know that I can be the best mom that day or the next day, depending on when I have time.
Yeah.
you
And that's
know,
the thing, is making the time to meet yourself. That's your divine connection with your spirituality, with your
right,
intuition.
right.
I had one, I don't know how many times I've said this in my lifetime, but there was an intuition that I received. Like I heard myself think it, but it wasn't my thoughts,
Yes,
that
yes.
said,
It's
how
the
does
best.
silence communicate with noise? And I was like, oh, I don't know. So I
How do-
started asking people, and my mom, when I asked her, she's like, "What are you talking about?" But the more times I like reflected on that question, and I thought, sometimes the things that don't scream the loudest are the more important things to pay attention to. Like,
Yes.
then I started hearing like, "Oh, the squeaky wheel gets the grease," but they all have to have grease to work. So they all it gets more, yeah, maybe it gets more
Mhm.
attention in that moment, but listening through the noise, like letting the static of life kind of settle and the dust settle, getting comfortable with silence,
Yes.
how we get to prime that intuition and be able to notice things faster so that that event that happens, we can respond more intuitively because we're used to paying attention to how it feels or, how it occurs to us.
It's funny because you said, you were talking about Jack Canfield's equation, and I recently did something because I heard something in my meditation about not responding to someone because this person likes to push my buttons, and I heard, just don't respond, don't say anything. And of course, I went and I saw this person last week, and they were pushing my button, and I just didn't respond. And it was a different outcome. It was so weird. It was so weird because I walked out of the event going, oh, it was okay. Like, nothing crazy happened. I wasn't triggered by this person. So I didn't say anything back because I kept silent, and I just moved along. I allowed this person to, sit in their misunderstanding or whatever. I think it was a misunderstanding, but I just didn't respond. So it's funny when you said changing your response changes the outcome. So true.
That's
So
absolutely
true.
true. And so this is how we lockstep, little bit at a time, change our
Yeah.
lives. This is how, big things and little things that happen to us are opportunities for us to make choices. So I
Right.
want to just, kind of take a pause here and
Mhm.
end our time. Thank you for being my
Oh,
first
thank you for
conversation.
having me. It was so good. Thank you
This,
so, so much.
yeah, this is like the first conversation of the new year. We are off and running here. Rise and Shine is all about how are you developing? How are you taking what's happening and occurring in your life and putting it into what you want to become? Where are you making choices to evolve on purpose? Because if you don't make the decisions, there's some other entity or some other circumstance going to make you decisions for you.
That's
So
so true.
I love that we were able to kind of open up the container here about how being a mom has given us that opportunity to look within and to harvest up some tools. So you heard Mona say we've got some resources out there on Instagram, and we have a bunch of people in our lives that we can call on for help, or people who we need to intentionally, create some boundaries, emotional or spiritual boundaries with, in order to become that next best self. So Mona, thanks a million for being here
Thank
with me.
you.
Cheers. Oh, there we go.
Cheers. Thank you.
We're
Cheers.
walking on sunshine. Whoa. So until next time, friends, right here on Rise and Shine, every single Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we broadcast. And stay tuned. If you have an idea for a conversation, please mention it down in the comments. Click the like, click the subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss another riveting conversation with amazing people that I get the opportunity to chat with because they're in my life and my network. And I invite you to the table. Let's have a conversation. Rise and shine, everybody. See you soon.